Now, the Rams Sports Desk.
Well, if you missed out on seeing American Pharoah win the Triple Crown at the Belmont, you'll get another chance at seeing history this year. Because of the expected crowds, Belmont will be capping attendance at 90,000 for Belmont. A full house expected to be watching Justify. We knew the conditions at Pimlico weren't supposed to be favorable. We still expected to be able to see the race. Please help us. It wasn't until the final turn when we actually saw the first place showdown between Justify and Good Magic, who finished second in the Kentucky Derby. The final moments of the race, we pick it up once again. They were in doubt, not just because of the fog, but because the field came crashing into Justify. Bravazo and Tenfold, he held them both off as they complete the second leg of the Triple Crown. Justify improving to 5-0 in his career. After going 37 years without a Triple Crown, New Yorkers could see their second in 4 years as Justify comes to the Belmont in 3 weeks. So let's talk about it with our horse racing analyst and former NYRA jockey, Maylan Studart. Maylan, good to have you in studio once again.
Great to be here again, Steve, and for a Triple Crown. That's so exciting.
Here
Finally,
we are once again.
Once again.
Right, second time in 4 years.
Yeah, very soon. I like it.
Yeah, again, so now we're going to have a Triple Crown coming to Belmont. It's going to be exciting, obviously. But what did you learn about Justify in the Preakness? Did he reaffirm something for you in this race?
I didn't exactly learn something new, but he did confirm his class. I mean, he's like a push-button horse. You just press the button and he's gone.
Yeah.
And that's what's great about him. That's what he's been showing in every race. He's so confident, so above of this level of horses, which is a really great bunch of 3-year-olds this year.
And his trip kind of felt the same. Because it was a sloppy track, he jumped out in front, he kept himself clean, and he stayed away from the mess behind him. This time, though, the field almost caught him. Did it concern you as we got a longer length out of these horses that the field is starting to catch up to him?
It's great that you say that because they are catching up with him with every race. I mean, in the Derby, you know, they were catching up with him, but not enough. And now in the Preakness, they're closer. Going into the Belmont for the Triple Crown, it's 1.5 miles to run. That's a lot of room. If Bravazo was running the Belmont Stakes today, he would have beat Justify.
Because he was coming at the end.
He kept coming. I loved Bravazo in his race today because he reminds me of when Drosselmeyer won the Belmont Stakes. You know, he just kept coming like a freight train. He never stops. He's like a marathon runner. It's the same pace throughout the whole race. He won't stop. But while the other horses in front of him stop, like Justify was stopping a little bit at the end, he just keeps coming and coming. He's going to pass you eventually. He just needed a little more room.
I don't know anybody that has as much passion for horse racing as you. You know, Tenfold was another horse that kind of impressed. This is a horse that really came out of nowhere, very lightly raced. You throw in the Preakness, and all of a sudden, you're seeing championship caliber quality out of him.
It was really interesting. It was a big surprise because Steven Asmussen, you know, is a great trainer. The jockey Santana, they're a great team, right? But this horse, Tenfold, he's only run 3 times before. This was his 4th race. So when we were talking, you know, about Justify's Apollo curse, breaking the Apollo curse, where he only ran as a 3-year-old,
right?
You know, Tenfold actually just ran. This was his 4th race
ever. Right.
And he showed this. So definitely a horse to watch throughout the year, and he likes the long distance. Very exciting.
All right, so even though this was clearly a shortened field, and it was a weakened field because a lot of the Derby winners skipped the Preakness, so maybe you can explain why you saw so many great horses choose not to enter this race.
Well, it's very typical for a Kentucky Derby runner to skip the Preakness and go into the Belmont because of the 2 weeks. You have to remember, the Kentucky Derby is a grueling race, 20 horses. It's easy to get hurt, to get nicked, bumped around. And then 2 weeks later, you have to give another high-caliber performance. And then 3 weeks later, you have to go to the Belmont even longer. It's grueling. So only the horses and the trainers who are very confident going into the Preakness really do go into Preakness, and you'll see horses in the Preakness that were not in the Derby. We saw a couple today. So because they're afraid of the horses kind of bouncing, kind of like Always Dreaming did last year when he ran a great race in the Derby winning. Then he came in the Preakness and he bounced and he didn't finish, which bouncing means you just gave it your all in one race, then you come back 2 weeks later and you can't perform.
Why can't horses bounce back after 2 weeks? Why is it so difficult for them to do this?
It's just too short. A regular typical race schedule is 3 to 4 weeks between races, and especially in the high caliber younger horses, because you really want to avoid injury and the recovery time. When you run in these big races, some of them use Lasix, so you're losing a lot of electrolytes. It's a lot of effort. Again, the Derby, you get bounced around, you can get hurt. And if you hurt something or pull something or bruise something, 2 weeks later, it's just too close.
Okay, well, look, the racing world is clearly not afraid to make changes. They added a point system recently to get horses into the Kentucky Derby. Would it be out of the realm of possibility for them to change the dates of any of these races, to open up the Preakness to a new field of contenders, or would that ruin the achievement of the Triple Crown?
People had mentioned talking back when California Chrome lost the Belmont Stakes. They were like, oh, it's not fair. They're bringing horses that have never run in any of the Triple Crowns here. So if you make, if you change the dates of the Derby and the Preakness and the Belmont, it's just a regular Grade 1 racing schedule. What's the point of the Triple Crown then if you don't make it as grueling and as intense and as challenging as possible to only have, a dozen Triple Crown winners ever?
That's what's special about it, is because it is an arduous journey for them to go on here.
Exactly.
But Belmont will clearly see the best 3-year-olds, and a lot of the horses that we saw in the Kentucky Derby are going to be coming off, as you said, after 5 weeks off. They're going to be racing in the Belmont. How much will that extra few weeks of a layoff help them against Justify?
It'll matter huge. First of all, because it's 5 weeks, you actually, you're supposed to work your horse a little bit harder to get him, to racing prep, to be able to be at his prime 5 weeks later. Like I said, 3 to 4 weeks is good, 5 weeks, a little bit more. So meanwhile, though, the horses that have been running in the Triple Crown, they are already fit. They're already ready. They're at their prime. So
Right.
We might see horses who haven't been in the Derby or the Preakness. Any 3-year-old can come into the Belmont. But it makes a huge difference for the Derby horses, because if you remember what happened in the Kentucky Derby, it was a total mess. I mean, running in the Kentucky Derby is like trying to catch your train at rush hour, but you're on the wrong side of the tracks. It's like you're weaving,
and then you add the
excuse me,
slop.
I have to go, please, and then you don't have room, and then you miss your train, the door's just shut. That's what it's like. So you're gonna have time to now go into Belmont, and it's probably gonna be a smaller field. I'm thinking maybe 13 horses.
It's not going to be the 20-horse field that you saw in the Kentucky Derby, but it's not going to be as small as you saw in the Preakness.
Right, exactly.
Real quick, I want to get to this because this week, New Jersey won their case to legalize sports gambling. Previously, horse racing, the only sport that was legalized to be bet on in New Jersey. Is this going to draw people to horse racing, or will it push people away from horse racing?
Well, we hope sports betting brings people to horse racing, because this is where it's going to matter. It really depends on each state now. It really depends on the public officials to say, look, we need sports betting to support horse racing. I mean, look at New Jersey. We have public officials already moving to make sure that horse racing, the track, will benefit from these sports betting handles. They're making sure that horse racing is involved in that. So it really depends on the kind of public officials that you have that are supporting the track. And also in Florida, sports betting is still legal because they have the Indian casinos there. So, it's going to vary from state to state. And here in New York, I really hope Governor Cuomo does protect horse racing, because horse racing alone creates 30,000 direct jobs in the state. I mean, that's a huge economy. That's not counting the peripheral and the indirect jobs that it creates for these small cities where there's so many, harness racetracks and the Naira tracks everywhere. So if actually if Cuomo doesn't support horse racing,
right,
you know, I think it's gonna, you know, if horse racing goes down, the state might go down with it.
Well, we will have to find out. That's something that we'll definitely be discussing in the coming months. Horse racing analyst and former NYRA jockey, and now you can catch her now a stocks reporter as well. Maylan Studart, thank you so much for coming in.
Pleasure being here. I'll see you. Hopefully, we'll talk about the Triple Crown when it happens.
In a few weeks. All right, stick around. We'll be right back.